CRISPR was first seen in bacteria as a defense system against viruses. When a virus attacks, the bacteria store a piece of the viral DNA in their own genome, kind of like keeping a mugshot of the invader. If the virus ever comes back, the bacteria uses this stored information to recognize and destroy it. Scientists realized they could borrow this bacterial defense system and use it to edit genes in almost any organism. CRISPR, short for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, is made up of a guide RNA that enables us to find the precise DNA we want to edit, and then a Cas9 protein that will go in and cut at the spot. With this technology, scientists can delete a gene, fix a mutation, or even introduce new DNA. CRISPR makes genetic changes faster, cheaper, and more accurate than ever. It's already being used to treat certain disorders such as sickle cell. But editing genes isn't as simple as editing text. Mistakes can happen. Off-target cuts might damage other genes, leading to unforeseen consequences. CRISPR doesn't just raise questions about curing disease, but about designing people. Could it push us towards a world in which some traits are seen as better, and only the wealthy can afford to give their kids these genes? In the end, and what we will tackle next, is even though we can edit genes, should we?
Tonight we're diving into one of the most controversial developments in reproductive technology. The startup company Orchid Biosciences launched a genetic screening service. Parents can then select the most desirable embryo to be used for pregnancy. The procedure costs about $2,500 per embryo, excluding IVF, making it accessible mainly to the wealthy.
So, for the right price, people can pick their future child's traits. Doesn't that seem a little unnatural?
Yes, and current genome editing technology could be advancing this even further. We now have the potential to go beyond picking from a parent's DNA and can now completely add or remove entirely new traits.
Yeah, in 2018, a Chinese researcher He Jiankui announced that he had edited the embryos of twin girls to make them resistant to HIV. It was the first and so far the only known case of germline editing in humans, and it caused global outrage because it was done secretly without full consent or safety testing. And later studies on CRISPR-edited embryos showed more problems, like unexpected mutations and big chunks of DNA getting cut out or rearranged. So it's not just a clean, find and replace on the genome. It can cause damage that we don't fully understand.
But don't you think that selecting against certain traits may imply that some lives are less valuable? Disability advocates argue that disability is a form of diversity and not a defect to be eliminated, and that the quality of life cannot be predicted by genetics alone. And studies also show that many disabilities have broad ranges in life satisfaction, making genetic prediction even more uncertain.
Yeah, agreed. It doesn't seem very fair to change a baby's DNA if it cannot decide those things for itself.
Well, luckily, these concerns have led to current restrictions on germline editing from the FDA and NIH. Dr. Chris Purr is an expert in bioethics relating to gene editing and has some important things to share regarding these restrictions.
Welcome, Dr. Purr. So, what do you think about these organizations and their work on CRISPR restrictions?
Well, currently the FDA regulates any clinical use of human gene editing technologies. Additionally, it prohibits any research or clinical trials involving heritable genome editing. In addition, the NIH does not fund any research that involves the creation or destruction of human embryos, including germline genome editing.
So has the FDA announced what basis these restrictions were made on?
Yes, so according to the FDA website, germline editing could result in an embryo developing in such ways that we cannot predict for certain, and editing its genome could lead to unforeseen long-term effects. Research on human embryos has shown large DNA deletions or rearrangements, which reinforces these safety concerns. They also mentioned that embryos who have not yet been born cannot consent to their DNA being manipulated, and due to these concerns, germline editing using public funding is completely banned in the US. However, there are no current laws prevent private institutions from contributing or producing new technology.
Interesting. So what does this mean for worldwide germline editing? Are there similar restrictions in other countries as well?
Mostly. For example, in the United Kingdom, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority also strictly regulates all fertility and embryo research. Additionally, the World Health Organization has released global recommendations in 2021 This urged countries to establish national guidelines or international registries in which strict governance was put in germline editing. This had led to most of the globe to put heavy restrictions or complete bans on germline research. However, the WHO has no reinforcement or enforcement power. Japan has notably loose restrictions or regulations on this research, which has allowed them to conclude experimentation with the use of human cells to create these human-animal chimeras. They also would allow for the distribution of embryos for gene experimentation, and while they do not allow research for reproductive purposes, violations of such rules are not punishable by law.
Thank you, Dr. Purr. Up next, we have survey results from local students on this topic. We will see you after the ad break.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are not blue. I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans, and I'm definitely not saying they're the comfiest jeans ever, or that they make your butt look really good. Why would I need to say that? But if you decide you want to buy them, I'm not gonna stop you.
Roberts does not have great genes. And now we'll be heading over to the CRISPR forecast for today. Seems like public opinions are heating up. What are we seeing?
Thank you. It's been quite the eventful day today for CRISPR gene editing, but let's take a good look at the trends circulating in the Chapel Hill region. First, let's track the awareness levels. Overall, it looks like the general population has a pretty good idea of what CRISPR is. Seems like there's a massive surge in familiarity with CRISPR, with 94% of respondents saying they've heard of it before. Visibility is high around here, folks.
Yes, that's definitely good to see. It looks like CRISPR technology is finally making its way into the general masses. We now move into a huge cluster of opinions around CRISPR gene editing to treat more serious diseases such as cystic fibrosis and cancer. Here we see a huge area of positivity with an overwhelming 92.7% of people either agreeing or strongly agreeing, with only a tiny fraction showing hesitation. I think it's safe to say that a powerful front of optimism is dominating the Chapel Hill area.
Definitely. But when we move on down to editing physical traits, things do seem to take a dramatic turn. Here we're seeing a cloud of pushback, with 41% strongly disagreeing and 37% disagreeing. Together, that creates a heavy pressure system of concern about designer traits. Only small patches of agreement are popping up on the map, with around 10% neutral or agreeing. And when it comes to the aesthetic traits such as eye color and hair color or height, most people seem to think that it may not be such a good idea to edit the genes of the fetus or its traits.
While most people seem to generally agree on those, the responses were much more split when it came to deciding if the benefits of this technology outweighed the risks. We're seeing a large spread here, folks, with 46% agreeing, 20% remaining neutral, and 7% disagreeing. When it comes to making such a heavy decision, more people seem to play the neutral party if they aren't well informed on the subject.
I would too. Now, lastly, one of our biggest moving systems today: will gene editing make society more equal or more divided? The majority at 68% said that it would make society more divided if we incorporated this technology as a standard practice, creating a large front on the map here. But 16% definitely sees the potential for increased equality.
I think that is fair to say, as these beneficial edits would most likely end up only being accessible at a much higher cost. It's also a big part of the reason organizations, including the FDA, have placed such heavy restrictions on germline editing.
And this graph over here shows how those who think society outcomes would be more divided have a higher possibility of disagreeing with choosing that CRISPR should be used to edit physical traits. Looks like the forecast for gene editing is quite a bit complicated today. Thank you guys for tuning in to this segment of Good Drivers, and we will see you all in the next one.